welcome back to Conscious Pathways. I'm your host, Brittany Carey, and I have a fabulous guest to share with you today. Julia Loman has been committed to social change, anti-bias, and multicultural practices her entire career and beyond. She has been in early care and education for the past 28 years, working with families and children aged 0 to 12 in various settings and positions, including from a teacher to program director. She is currently an early care and education consultant and works for Head Start programs all across San Diego County. Her passion for social justice and anti-racism was nurtured at a young age by her father, who taught Black studies. She has woven this passion into everything she does, personally and professionally. In addition to her professional work, Julia is a proud parent of a 24-year-old and a bonus parent to a 7-year-old. Her ultimate child development experiments. I am so excited to share this conversation with you. We talked about everything from early childhood to higher education. We talked about our hopes, our goals, our dreams. It was just such a beautiful and amazing conversation, so let's jump into it. Welcome to the Conscious Pathways podcast. I have Julia with me today.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. I think the first time that we actually met each other was earlier this year at the San Diego Imperial California Association for the Education of Young Children Conference. It is such a long name for that conference.
Yes.
Yes. I feel like we need a shorter acronym for the acronym.
Well, it used to be shorter. Funny thing is, so it used to be simply SDAYC, so San Diego Association for Education of Young Children. And actually, while I was president of which is the local chapter of the state and national chapter of National Association for Education of Young Children. And so NAYC for short went through a shift in how they were doing their affiliates and chapters. And so as part of my presidency, I helped shift that from SDAYC to becoming a chapter under the state. And the state is the California Association for Education of Young Children. And so with that shift, we had to shift our name because we were not going to be our own entity anymore. And so hence the San Diego Imperial chapter of California AUIC. So
I love that breakdown. Because I did not know. I just remember trying to promote that we were there.
I was like, doesn't mean that it doesn't need to shorten, but at least you know why.
At least I know why. There's always a reason why.
Yes.
But I remember you did such a beautiful session there, and I was just so inspired, and it was just culturally relevant, and it was just had so much good, juicy content in it. And I was like, I need to connect with this person.
And I'm so glad that you did. That was a fun one to do. There's never enough time. Even if you're given 45 minutes or 2 hours, there's never enough time. Yes, I'm glad that you were able to come in and we connected, because I was like, I walked away thinking, I'm really glad. It's like, we definitely need to talk. And this is the first time. No, we ran into each other at Planning Council.
We did.
Was that in July?
I believe that was back in July. We ran into each other at the local Planning Council, one of the big council meetings, because they have the big council meetings and then the subcommittee meetings. Lots of meetings. But that was so great to run into you, because I know we've been trying to connect for a while, and life is just lifing sometimes.
Yes, it does that a lot.
Yes. So I'm so honored that you're choosing to spend this time with me today and join the podcast. So I have some questions for you. My first one is, tell me a little bit about your background in early childhood education. Why early childhood education? Where did you get your start? Tell me all of it.
Well, I tell you all of it. It may be hours, but let me see if I can do an abbreviated version. Well, I've been in early childhood for 28 years.
Wow.
Yes, 28 years.
Wow.
28 years. I started when I was 2.
We're going way, way back.
I started early childhood education in early childhood. No, actually, I had gotten out of high school and wanted to be a teacher and started over at San Diego State and was working at a sporting goods store while I was taking classes, because a lot of times you go to college and you're not really in the field yet. And I was not happy. And I had someone ask me, like, well, what would you make you happy? I was like, well, working with kids, which is why I'm going to school. And I said, well, why don't you work at a preschool? I was like, oh, I don't have to have my degree yet. And they're like, no. So I actually ended up dropping from San Diego State at the time. Now I know I had some learning and neurodivergent abilities that were occurring. And so I started taking classes at Grossmont College, which ironically is where you and I met.
Yes.
I was doing that workshop. And so I started taking early childhood classes. Now, I will tell you, when I tried to get a preschool job, I hadn't taken those classes yet. This was back in the day when you actually went through the classifieds and looked through the newspaper. So I was calling places and saying, hey, I'm interested in being a teacher, because in my mind, I have always loved working with little kids. And so they're like, I kept seeing CD or ECE after, and I didn't have any idea what that meant. And so they're like, well, do you have any units? And I was like, what kind of units? I was like, oh, on here, what are ECI units? And I'm sure the person on the other end was, who is this person? They're like, you need to go to school and take classes. And in my head, I'm like, somebody said I didn't need to have a degree. It's like, well, no, but you do need to take classes.
Yes.
So that's how I ended up at Grossmont. And it was at Grossmont when I was I had 6 units, and one of my classmates had a preschool that they had just taken over in Lakeside, needed a toddler teacher, and said, hey, they asked me if I was interested. And I said, yeah, sure, but I don't have a lot of experience. And I said, oh, that's okay. Because they'd seen me in class. They had never seen me in the classroom, though.
Yes. 2 different things.
Yeah. I really would never have I wouldn't say never, but I would not have put my children in my classroom because I have higher expectations. I was a teacher in a 2-year-old room. So if you've worked with 2-year-olds.
Yep, I sure have.
Working with 1 or 2 is one thing, but working with 12 of them all by yourself is a bit of a challenge.
Which is still wild to me that you can have a classroom, at least in California. I don't know how it is for other states as well, but in California, you can have a classroom full of 12 2-year-olds, and you can just have that by yourself. And it's great if you love chaos. It's great if you love chaos.
Yeah, or not, or you don't really you're not really super concerned about developmentally appropriate practices. There's other states, and it's been a while since I've done the research, but there are other states that you don't have to have any units.
Wow.
Zero.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that is wild to me.
Yeah, and so I think I lasted about 3 months, and I kept getting sick because when you work with little people, your immune system needs to build up. And there was one day, right, every year that now, I think it was the day that I was changing a diaper on a stack of cots because my classroom did not have a changing table. And I had one little one in the bathroom, which at least I could see them visually. And of course, everybody else is kind of playing in the room. And one of them got stuck in it was in the little kitchen set. So on the little play sink, they climbed in there and got stuck in there.
Oh, wow.
And while they're in there, one of their friends thought they would take a taste of them and bit them in the leg.
Oh, no.
And then promptly ran out the door to the playground.
Oh, wow.
And so I sat there and I was like, okay, this one will roll off and get hurt. So let me finish this. The one that's outside, not supposed to be out there, and I'm pretty sure that's a licensing problem. However, they won't leave the yard.
Mm-hmm.
There's also no phone in my classroom.
Oh, geez. Okay.
To ask for help. The one that's crying and stuck in the kitchen, he's stuck there. He's not getting out. So
oh, no.
I triaged.
You're just triaging. Yes, you got to triage.
Yes. So that experience, I did change the diaper. Eventually got the kid off the playground. Got the child out of the kitchen sink, under the kitchen sink. Put the ice on them.
Yep.
And said, hey, I need to get another job because this is more, I need to know more. And I think that was the big thing. And it's always been for me is I need to know more. Whereas for some folks, they're like, that's okay. This is what I need to do. And I just was like, I don't feel comfortable with this. So I need to learn more. And so I ended up working at a family childcare where I was able to get more units and experiences, which was a beautiful, beautiful setting. And she and I are still friends. Wow. My son ended up going there, and so I worked in a family childcare for a little while, and she kept paying me more and more so I wouldn't leave. But I'm one of those people, even if I enjoy the place, I always want to be learning. Yes. And I kind of felt like I'd soaked up everything that I could and ended up going and working at, I had a friend, actually my dad's friend had his partner was working at one of the colleges here in the enrollment department and said, we always need subs and this is how much they pay. And I was young and trying to pay my rent and was like, hey, let me go over there. And I did go over there as a sub, ended up getting on full time. I worked with the toddlers for most of it. And then I went into the 2-year-olds again.
Dip your toe back in.
I love them. I do. And I realized that is not my gift. 2-year-olds are not, 2-year-old classrooms are not my gift.
Yes.
The classroom I worked in we had 24, but at least there were 4 teachers. There was a lead teacher and associate teachers. So there were 4 of us. However, mine was always the table where the kids finished first. Everybody's like, don't let them get up because then they're all going to get up. I'm like, what to do?
Yes. Need to learn more.
I do. I was like, I've learned how to say sit down in Japanese, Chinese, Farsi, these languages. I'm speaking their language, but it's not what they want to do because they're 2.
It's because they're 2. And developmentally, those attention spans just aren't, they're not there.
No. Yeah. So I was there for a little while. I worked in the 2-year-old room, worked with 4-year-olds. Ended up, let's see, did I get married? Yeah, I got married. And I got engaged and was thinking, I really am ready for my own classroom. But where I was, nobody was going to leave because you have great benefits, amazing benefits. And if you can keep doing what you love doing, you have great benefits. You've been there a while, so you just stay.
Yeah.
So I moved on.
Was this a Head Start or was it a California state preschool?
It was a state preschool. They had state funding. Yeah, they had state funding. And so I ended up taking a job at a private preschool, private nonprofit that specialized had also home health nursing. And so at the school is really cool. At the time it was called Special Care. Now it's called Together We Grow, I believe, and it's not in the same place.
Okay.
But they also there's teachers and nurses. So for those
Oh,
children that have
wow.
medically fragile
Yeah.
needs. And so that was a really good experience. And so I got married. They said, I was going in for working in the infant room, which is,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of I would always be willing to go back to the
Mm-hmm.
infant room because I absolutely, it's just so much magic happens in a short period of time.
Yes. Yes.
And so they said I was replacing one of four teachers in a very small program that were all going on maternity leave within weeks of
Okay.
each other.
Oh, wow.
Yes, two of them were in that same classroom.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm fine. Doctor told me I would have trouble having children. So I'm the
Okay.
one for you. And they said, well, don't drink the water. I was like, I'll drink the water. And 6 months later, I was pregnant.
So there was something going on in the water there.
Oh yes, and from what I heard after I had left, that did happen to other people too. So it was kind of funny.
Oh, wow.
But they moved from the location, so I don't know if the magic is still happening.
They're like, we need to move locations. We keep losing our teacher.
Yeah,
What's happening?
yeah, right. Because they keep getting pregnant, and so yeah, he is now 24. So this was 24 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
the day that I was nursing him, I had another with a bottle on the other side, and somebody I was like bouncing with my foot. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to take one of you home with me. And kudos to everyone who is able to work
Yeah.
with their own children in their classroom or at their
Mm-hmm.
family childcare. I hands down, you are amazing. So I needed to have that separation. So I ended up
Understandable.
going,
Yeah.
that's not my gift. I have many others. So that's when I got into administration. And so
Okay.
I became an assistant director at a for-profit program. So it was my first
Mm-hmm.
time working at a straight for-profit. Until
Mm-hmm.
then, it had always been nonprofit
Yeah.
that I know of. At least in this childcare settings, because in
Yeah.
the center-based settings.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard for me to reconcile being making money off of a service.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was really hard for me to think about profit, which was also part of my challenge when I worked in retail. It's like, if somebody doesn't want
Yeah.
something, I'm not going to try to convince you that you do want it so
Yes.
I can make money.
Yes.
That just
That's why
isn't
I would not do sales. I don't think I would be good at sales. Like, do you want this? No? Okay. Have a good day.
right. Like, I might, yeah, okay, now I might actually, I was like, are you sure you don't want it? This is what it could do for you. Then you're like, no. All right.
It's like, okay. Okay. So the idea of upselling, I used to work in restaurants and bars and
Mm-hmm.
cafes, and they would always be like, okay, this is the thing we need you to upsell, like upsell this. And I'm like, okay, I guess. But up to my own devices, like, I don't know, if you don't want it, you don't want it. Like I don't have the sales gene. I recognize that.
Yeah.
I agree. I have many other talents. I am talented in an abundance of things. I recognize that sales is not the thing that I excel in.
It's funny because, also I've also realized just throughout the years that people that are really good in sales will also try to convince you that you can sell things. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, like
Mm-hmm.
here, you can do that. No,
No,
no.
that's not
But,
my
I
gift.
think no, no. And I think also just not even just the gift, but inside it doesn't feel right. I know
Mm-hmm.
somehow my parents aren't sure when I brought this up how I got the message, but this message that whatever I do has to have social capital.
Mm.
And for me, working in early childhood education and my interactions in the different spaces is
Mm.
building that social capital. And
Mm-hmm.
that isn't necessarily monetary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was the other piece that just didn't fit right. And I
Yeah.
was actually started getting really kind of depressed because I was like, okay, I have the time he was 18 months at home. I'm working from 11 to 7 because we had late hours, and like I said, it doesn't feel right. And ended up after that, I ended up working for the Y at one of their child development centers. And my heart was back.
Yay.
And working there. Actually, no, you know what? Before I did that, I went back to the family child care because my friend was like, Julie, come back. Bring Sean with you. Come back. And so I felt better. It was a good reset. But then once again, she's like, I know I can't pay you enough. I can't keep paying you more. And you've got to keep learning, even if I keep paying you more. So then I ended up at the Y.
Okay.
Yeah. So all that time I was still continuing my education, but I think the foundation at Grossmont College was I think one of the strengths, because there was such a focus on the whole child, all child development. I've taken classes at City, Mesa, all of the different places. I just know that when I was at Grossmont, this honor of young children, and I also got introduced to the AUIC system, I should say, the professional development system, because there was a pamphlet in one of my classrooms. So I literally have been a member since I've been in the field, off and on, those younger days where like, I can't quite pay that, but I'll go. So this desire for learning kind of it kept going. So I take my classes, still then become a mom, become a wife, and still keep going and working and learning. And, the Y I worked for as a site supervisor and a program director, and then moved forward. That had to do with my son. I was working 12-hour days, and he was such a trooper though, because once he was potty trained, he came to work with me, and he was so cute. At the end of the day, they'd ask him at the front desk, they say, Sean, you want to work at the front desk or do you want to help us write receipts on the computer? And you'd say, I work on the Peter. So you'd go work on the computer. And so it was really this nice, cool little family that we created. And actually, once again, I have friends that were still really close from when I worked there, that we really worked together. Like, though I want to be more than when we come home, okay, let's go to bed, eat and go to bed.
Yeah.
And worked got a job as a program director for Child Development Associates down in South Bay. But now at the time, they had a for-profit program they were running. And then I worked on the nonprofit, state-funded. I was the program director for them. And it was an amazing learning experience. And that's where I got introduced to the local planning council. One of the founders, Charlene Tressler, she, rest in power, was extremely influential and on my path. And we got a grant to help develop the master plan for preschool for all, which we currently know now as QPI.
Yes.
And also part of a foundation of of San Diego County's blueprint for childcare.
Yes.
Little did I know at the time, but at the time it was to help support the development of the master plan. And that's where I learned about the politics in early childhood education, and understand, all the decisions that are made at the county level. And remember thinking, these are a lot of decisions that are being made about people that are not here, or for people that are not here. And so I think once again, tapped into that desire to make sure that there's a voice there and let other people know that, hey, while you're in the classroom, these are decisions that are being made. Do you want to have an input, or you're like, I'm not really worried about it? And so helping bring those issues forward to help other people understand. And also was part of that development, joining the SDAYC board and starting with committee work. And I was a committee chair for administrators and directors, and the committee for social change. was near and dear to my heart, where I got connected on the larger scale with the state
Okay.
association, which is now California AUIC, and
Nice.
became a part of the board there and learned more there. And just, I'm very grateful because of early childhood education and my passion that I've been able to go to different places and see what's going on, and then return to home to see what I can do with that information.
Yes.
So,
Love that.
There's so many wonderful things happening in this world that we don't know about, and so many amazing things that people do with young children in different parts of the world that we don't know. And why not, especially in San Diego County, where we are a destination when it comes to the military, where you have like huge military population and all kinds of different people coming here. And then one of the main ports for refugees and immigrants. And so why shouldn't we know more about the places that they came from and not just assume that they need our education to be this specific way, but to really be authentic and responsive, and also understand that even if it may not have been the best quote quality, that this is the education foundation they're built on. So let's understand that, so that we can kind of weave it all together, not melt it, but weave it all together,
weaving
like
it,
this tapestry.
incorporate it.
Exactly. And so,
that is
so now
so
I've been
powerful.
at Head Start for 15 years.
Wow.
Ended up here at Neighborhood House Association for 15 years and have done different things even there. So I've done a lot of different things, from being in the classroom and also being in administration, and then also being support services and disabilities coordinator. And so the lenses, I think the most common thread, no matter what my experience has been, is one, that social capital. And ensuring is elevating voices of those that may not commonly be heard or spoke for. And not just elevating their voices, but going back and saying, hey, these are the things that are happening, and I know you can't be there. What can I do to say? I think a friend of mine said, I think it was in 10th, 11th grade, somebody gave me a poem. I was in Catholic school, and they gave me a quote about being like the voice for the voiceless. And I don't believe anybody has no voice. Everybody has a voice in a different way. But there is a time where you can help voice what others need you to do. And so I kind of worked on channeling and just making sure I have that authentic and not just authentic, but the voice is ingrained in me, and that it's not mine, that I'm not taking it for myself,
And that's like that core of advocacy is, again, giving those voices to the people who have been historically disenfranchised, elevating them, making sure that the people on the ground have the resources, have the opportunities to be able to advocate and be a part of those solutions. There's so much of what you said is just, it resonates so deeply with me. And I've really loved and I've enjoyed hearing your pathway through, just different jobs you've had, different places you've worked. Because I think when we think about early childhood education, sometimes, like I've heard like in my classes as well, people kind of not wanting to do early childhood education because they don't want to be pigeonholed to do one thing. It's like, well, if I do this, then I can only be this. I can only be a teacher, or I can only be a director, or I can only, teach at a collegiate level. Like those are my only three options if this is what I do. And that's not the case. There is so much that you can do with your background and experience in early childhood. And as you said, there's things that we can be doing in policy. There's things that we can be doing even with the school board. That early childhood education voice needs to be more prevalent, especially with TK now being a part of essentially the school district, now
Mm-hmm.
more than ever, like our voices need to be heard about what's
Mm-hmm.
developmentally appropriate, what policies are appropriate. And as you're saying, California and San Diego is exceptionally diverse. We have a lot of backgrounds, we have a lot of voices, we have a lot of people, even from different states, even from different countries, communities, different
Mm-hmm.
languages. We have just this wealth of diversity that is here.
Mm-hmm.
Why not tap into that? Why not bring these voices to the table and have that be a part of these policy meetings? Which is so great. What the local planning council is doing is
Mm-hmm.
really doing its best to elevate a diverse voice, a diverse amount of voices, so that we
Mm-hmm.
can propose and make suggestions and make recommendations. The blueprint was such a really great thing that, as you mentioned, is something that didn't just emerge this year. It's been going on. It's been talked about for years. People have been recommending things. It's been in the process for years. So many different voices have had an impact on making on the pathway to this blueprint going up to, the board of supervisors and then getting approved, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of seeing how what we do with that going forward is
Mm-hmm.
going to be so amazing. So yes, another thing that you mentioned that I really loved is you're saying I just need to learn more. I think when we
Mm-hmm.
go through hard things, especially in early childhood, it can be really disheartening, and it can be, oh, I'm just not good at this, or
Mm-hmm.
this just isn't for me, or there's so many different ideas that come out of that, when at the core of it, it's just, I need to learn a little bit more about this.
Mm-hmm.
I swear, I say it almost every time on this podcast, but I'm a better teacher the more that I learn. The more that I learn from my peers, the more that I learn about theory, the more that I learn about social, social change and
Mm-hmm.
social justice and anti-bias and just all these different things. When I learn more, I'm able to bring that to the teaching community, and I'm able to bring that to the classroom, and it makes me a better teacher in so many different ways, just by being curious and wanting to learn more.
Yes, yes. It's one of my descriptions I often use for myself as being passionately curious.
Yes.
It's like always, one just to add on the learning more, I think the other piece of that is and is learning more about myself and who I am
Mm-hmm.
in response to the different environments.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's some places where, like, I've learned, it's like, I can learn all the theory and practice all of these different things. And I
Mm-hmm.
know if she's listening, one of my previous supervisors is probably thinking, yeah, that sounds about right. Like early in my career, it's like, hey, this is what you can do. Just like think about the 2-year-olds. Like, hey, this is what you do with the 2-year-olds. I'm like, I did it, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
working. Is that there's so many things that I kept trying and doing different things. Like, okay, I'll approach it like this. Okay, I can approach it like this. Okay, then there's this theory. I'm like, okay, then there's just me. And then there are these
Mm-hmm.
little individual beings that are interacting with an environment of other
Yes.
beings. And
Yes.
so at some point, you're like, I can learn everything in the world, but it's just not something that is my best skill. Just like, my dad was a basketball coach,
Mm-hmm.
and I could tell you all the things, not as much now, but when I was younger, I could tell you everything you needed to do to get your shot in there,
Mm-hmm.
how to correct it, all of these different things.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'd go to do it myself, and my body, I'm a soccer player. I ran track and
Mm-hmm.
soccer. Those were the ones that I excelled at. Played basketball. Anything required hand-eye coordination, it's more of a challenge. And so
Yeah.
even though I know all the theory and the background, the ability
Mm-hmm.
to execute wasn't necessarily there. And it's the same thing. And there's
Yes.
different points in
Yes.
my life where I may not have been able to execute then, but I can now, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of finding where that fits, you know?
Yes. Yes. And there's absolutely no shame in just recognizing that, you know what, this is a skill that I'm going to keep working on. I'm going to keep
Mm-hmm.
developing it. I'm going to keep learning, but I know that it's not there for me. Like, that is not where
Yeah.
I naturally am going to keep excelling. And there's no shame in that. Sometimes I've been in classrooms. 2-year-olds are personally my favorite age. I love 2-year-olds. I have the 2-year-old gene.
I love them.
I
I
love
love
that.
them. I love them.
I love it. I love working with them. I love being in the
Oh,
classroom with them. That is my favorite age to work with. I love them. Now you put me in a room with a bunch of 17-year-olds, I'm like, okay, well, that is not my strength. I can do it. I know developmentally about adolescence. I know exactly what you're saying. I know everything there is to go
mhm,
into adolescence, adolescent development. I love it. I love youth adult partnerships. I love that. In
mhm.
practice, though, I just recognize that that's not my strongest. That's not my strength. They're
Yeah.
going to
Well,
make one snarky comment at me and my feelings are going to get hurt. So.
oh, see, and I would have been the one that was making the snarky comment. So I'm so sorry for that. Well, it's funny because when I worked at the Y, I ended up being taking on the camp program and the after school program. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's programming up to age 12. And which was fine. It's like, hey, I've got the skills to administer this program. And I realized for myself is that even though I had the skills, I was able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
My heart was more in the 0 to 5.
Yeah.
Whereas, for me, it's like, right, camp was fun,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a week and you never know if you're going to have the same kids or not.
Yeah.
And I was at a smaller one of the Ys. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, okay, well, if I don't have this kid with, I think in the classroom or even in a after school program, that you have those same kids every day and you get to watch them grow and learn
Mm-hmm.
and grow. And um, the challenges presented for those that are in elementary school were just a little bit more than where my heart was. But until,
Mm-hmm.
actually, I shouldn't say that. As my son has gotten older, well, now he's 24, but I noticed at each age, because I was a little nervous. I'm like, okay, he's
Mm-hmm.
going to not be 5. He's going to get older than 5 at some point.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with him? And I think because I think I've been given the gift of being able to see the magic in
Yes.
development of people. And
Snap.
so,
Yes.
yeah, people are so fascinating. And I have to
Mm-hmm.
stop myself sometimes, even now. I'm like, wow, that's really fascinating. Like, but you're
Yes.
not supposed to be doing that. So let's go
Yes.
to
Let's
purpose, not
redirect.
just be fascinated. It makes it difficult when you're married, sometimes. This process was really cool. It's like, no, it's not cool for me. you
Yes.
know?
Yes. My favorite phrase that I would always use, especially with my 2-year-olds, is
Uh-huh.
tell me about your idea, right? So you'll see them like climbing on the table. They're like putting chairs on the table. They're trying to climb on it. And I'm like, okay, pause.
Mhm.
I see you have an amazing idea. Tell me
Mhm.
about walk me through your idea here. And they do it like, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. That sounds so fun.
Mhm.
But here's some other ideas. Let's
Mhm.
work together. I think there's some other ways that we can do that that's not putting
Mhm.
your body in danger and it's not putting our
Yeah.
friends' bodies in danger. Let's talk
Yes.
this out. Let's figure it out. And
And
there's
we
so
have
much
to,
magic in that.
there is, and we must, and it really is like, let's work within the constraints of the reality we
Mm-hmm.
have, which is a classroom.
I need to remind my own self of that on a regular basis.
Right? Right? I know. I remember one time I was at I think I was a director at the time, and I was at a site where the teacher was like, yeah, we have the child with challenging behavior. And that's another
Mm-hmm.
area that I love getting in and rolling up my sleeves and
Yes.
helping kind of figure out how to
Mm-hmm.
manage. And so I remember they're like, one of the things this child kept going up the slide. And I was like, well, why can't he go up the slide? What's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with going up the slide? Like,
Yeah.
well, you're not supposed to do that. Like, but why not? Well,
Mm-hmm.
because people can get hurt. Like, okay, but there's nobody else there. How can they get hurt? And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're just not supposed to do that. And so I think for me, it's like always
Mm-hmm.
asking why or why not. And so I'm like, okay,
Yes.
well, it's definitely more of a challenge to go up than it is to go down.
Yes.
So are there challenges that are there presented that make it harder to go up in other areas that are safe than to go down? And really it's like,
Mm.
okay, what is this child needing? And can we meet that
Yes.
need? And,
Yes.
it's not always popular Because it's always
Mhm.
like, no, you just don't go up the slide. I'm like, well, I go up the slide all the time. Well, I used to. And so I think being one of those people that would go up the slide and say
Mhm.
things that you really shouldn't be saying, and kind of helps see the multiple dimensions that are
Yes.
available within that magic. So like, okay,
Mhm.
you can do this magic here, but
Mhm.
you can't do just kind of, I think, I don't know, you watch Harry Potter?
I never watched Harry Potter. I know.
Same
In my
words.
age group, it was all the rage, and for some reason, I just did not.
And that's okay. And a lot of, I
Mhm.
know, so there, more and more people, and I know not everybody watches it, and not everybody agrees with the whole idea of magic. But
Mhm.
one of the premises in there is that you are not supposed to do magic in front of what's called muggles or non-magic
Yeah.
people.
Mhm.
So really, once it's like there's a place where you do it, and there's a place where you
Ah.
can't do it.
Yes.
And so is helping. And I was like, okay, well, here, let's frame it. Just kind of like your 2-year old. It's like,
Mhm.
this is an amazing construction idea that you have.
Mhm.
We're in a classroom where there's lots of other people and somebody can
Yeah.
get hurt. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, can't do it here on this table, but let's find somewhere else.
Yes. And that's so much.
Yeah.
I always go back to this idea of just very intentional teaching. Like, what is my intention? Right? Is my intention that the students in my classrooms are blindly obedient, that
Mm-hmm.
they do exactly what I say and they don't question me at all? Or is my
Mm-hmm.
intention that I want these young individuals to
Mm-hmm.
be agents of social change? Right? Do I want
Mm-hmm.
them to go throughout the world and question things, have questions, right? Do I want them
Mm-hmm.
to understand that in different spaces, we might have different rules. What works in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom might not be the same rules you have at home. And the same rules you have at home might not be the same rules you have at grandma's house, right? There
Right.
might be completely different rules there. And so different spaces have different rules. And let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about that, right? So, what is my intention by telling this child they can't go up the slide, right? Is it my intention to keep kids safe? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Then let's make a plan with this child. Let's make them plan. Let's stop and look. Okay, take a pause. Before we go up the slide, let's use our looking eyes. Do you see a friend up there? Because if a friend is up there and they're coming down and you're trying to go up, something's going to happen. Something that nobody here wants is going
Mm-hmm.
to happen. Like, what do you think could happen? Right? And then their wheels start turning, like, oh, okay. So you're looking up there. You're going to call out to your friends, like, I'm going to come up now so that they know
Mm-hmm.
what's coming, right? So now we're working
Mm-hmm.
together. Now we're using social emotional skills. Now we're
Mm-hmm.
doing, right? That's my intention. My intention is to
Mm-hmm.
have a developmentally appropriate classroom. My intention is to provide quality care. My intention is that these individuals grow up to be good, decent, happy people. And part of that means we got to work with our peers. Part of that means we got to
Mm-hmm.
learn that there's different rules for different spaces. There's
Mm-hmm.
different people like different things, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. The other piece that you said was, is this going to be safe for others? And I think
Mm-hmm.
as we look at the parallels in life, that there's some places like you're going to
Mm-hmm.
go up a slide and people are
Yeah.
like, oh, why is that person going up that slide? You're not supposed to be doing
Mm-hmm.
that. And in my head, I'm like, well, there's nobody there, so it must be safe. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, there is a giant man up there that is going to get
Mm-hmm.
everybody. Or, not that they're like, there's a big monster, or
Yeah.
there's reasons why in that setting you just don't go up there because you could get hurt in ways that you have
Yeah.
no idea about.
You can't even conceptualize yet, but I know.
We're
As the
like,
adult who can see
ew.
it,
We're like,
I can
oh,
see
it's
it.
happening again.
Yeah.
Those curious slide climbers. This is
Yes.
what
Yes.
happens.
It is what happens. And you just again just be intentional. What is our intention here?
Mm-hmm.
What do I actually want them to learn? What do I want them to be doing? And when I'm kind of going back to what you said too, is connecting back to yourself and connecting back to
Mm-hmm.
your own, like, what do I want? Who do I want to be as an educator and as a teacher? What is the environment that I want to create? What are my
Mm-hmm.
intentions? And when you're really firm on those things, that this is what I want my classroom community to look like and to feel like. I want my
Right.
students to question me if they don't understand. I want them to if they think there's a better way that we could be doing something in the classroom, let's talk about it. I don't want to be the all-seeing, all-knowing, omnipotent
Mm-hmm.
being in the classroom where whatever I say
Mm-hmm.
goes and that I know everything in the world. I don't want, because I don't. I don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
No.
so much joy in that. I want to hear their suggestions and I want to have dialogue. I want to be able to talk that through of, you know what, I see you have a really great idea here. Here's where I'm coming from on that. Or that's a
Mm-hmm.
great idea, but that might not work for all of our friends. Let's
Mm-hmm.
brainstorm a better idea that we can utilize all of our friends in that idea, right? I want that.
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing that, that means that I might think about a thing a different way, or I might go about a rule a different way. I always love community rules in the classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even for our very, very young learners, community rules can be so important for them to, again, learn, okay, there's different rules and different roles for different spaces that I
Mm-hmm.
go. And that's okay. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
going to be okay. At the park, I can climb up the slide all day, every day, and no one's going to tell me no, right? At
Mm-hmm.
school, we got to stop, look, and listen sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to have a collision, and nobody's going to like that.
I love what you said as far as just going back to that intentionality. It's like, what is my
Yes.
intention here in this space?
Mm-hmm.
It's like as a teacher, and then I think also questioning, is this intent, does my intention fit this space? And
Yes.
this vision I know of, this is what I'd like to be. However, this is what the reality is, and how am I with it? And I
Yes.
think developing that emotional intelligence as well as
Mm-hmm.
the social intelligence, there's the multiple intelligences, and really tapping
Yes.
into it to understand that, the reality is, and my son just told me that, the 24-year-old, I have my 7-year-old bonus baby, who also is one of those, I is like, hey, we have lots of discussions about why this is
Mm-hmm.
okay and this is not okay, and why they think that this should be okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I I think I recently said, is like, honestly, right now it's just because I need you to do what I asked you to do. It's not a time
Mm-hmm.
to be debating or questioning. And
Yes.
I think the 24-year-old said, that's actually one of the worst answers you could possibly give somebody. And like, what I did worked way too well. Way too well. It's just been the story his whole life. But I think ultimately it's true. There are some
Yes.
times that it's like, if there is an emergency, it is
Mm-hmm.
not the time to be questioning the person telling you how to get out of the burning
Yes.
building about why they chose that path.
Yes.
Why are we going this way? I really just go, because you
Mm-hmm.
are going to get burnt alive. Just go.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
So is understanding, the time and space. And I think our goal
Yes.
as educators, and I think that's where I feel like my passion is with the young children, but also with the
Mm.
adults that work with the young children, is to help navigate those spaces where we figure out, okay, this is a space where I have to just do
Yes.
what needs to happen, and what is my role as a teacher, helping children to understand that,
Mm-hmm.
we have to do that this way
Yes.
because of XYZ. And there
Mm.
are times that, we don't have to talk about it, but we don't have to
Yeah.
be rude or demeaning or like, wow,
Yeah.
I would love to have this conversation with you, but
Mm-hmm.
right now it's time to go to sleep, and everybody else is really quiet and we don't
Yeah.
want to wake them up. That's the
Yes.
reality.
It's, yes.
But we
And
want
I
to have
think
that conversation, you
exactly.
know?
And I think talking that out, I think sometimes we think of young children and we think, oh, they're like, I don't think we sometimes think of children as people. And that is like the most bizarre thing to me. Like, no, they're just people. They're just smaller and learning. They're learning how to people, but they're still people. And
Yeah.
talking them through these types of things, exactly what you said of, I I value your input and I think that your voice is very valuable in this community. Yes. And right now
Mm-hmm.
at this moment, I do not have the capacity to hear that. I would love to hear it after nap time.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it's not very respectful to our friends that we are talking. our friends are trying to sleep. We need to be quiet, but actually talking that out to them. And we may need to have that conversation multiple times, depending on the age, multiple times throughout multiple minutes, But eventually, again, that intention is I want the students in my classroom to learn to be respectful, right? And what does it mean to be respectful? In my classroom, being respectful doesn't always mean that you need to blindly be obedient to everything I say, but sometimes that means let's look around at our community. Is what we're doing right now, is that helping our community or is that hurting our community? And if that's my intention, then I can have these conversations with them. And eventually, by the end of the year, it'll all seep in. It'll all seep in. And then they'll be using my words to each other. And I'm like, okay, it only took us 9 months to get here, but we did get here.
That's so valuable is it takes time. And, as adults, we forget about that and think that just because we're adults, that it should have already happened. And we're all still learning too. And so if there's a child, it's been 9 months and they're still not getting it, I got to look at myself and saying, what am I doing? What can I do differently? What can I help them with? Because somebody like myself who does, I have ADHD, inattentive type, which a lot of people are more in tune with, like they hear ADHD and think, oh, they're all over the place. And that's not always the case, is that sometimes they're all over the place in their brain. They're like hyper, there's like full speed ahead. And
didn't know that.
so it's not always that they don't hear you. It's just that they're trying to figure it out. And some of that is helping them find the key, the right key that's going to unlock the door. I kind of think of it, and especially for myself, because a lot of people don't know this about me. I haven't really made it public for a lot of people, because it does have a stigma, and there are people start seeing you differently when you say it, and they're like, "Oh, that's because of her ADHD." I'm like, no, it's just because I'm tired of what's happening. Nothing to do with that. But it's kind of like, for some, they always say that the expression "a square peg in a round hole." It's kind of like having a really big round hole that square peg can fit in, but not quite. And there's just something there that's not quite. And you're like, well, they get it because they've done it here. It's like, yeah, but they haven't quite mastered it, or there's something that's not clicking for them. And trying to make sense out of it. And my role, I think there's the intention and understanding your role. So there's your intentions, but what is your role in it? Like, yeah, this is my intention, but that's not really my role. Like for myself, I've always, it's like, I'm a facilitator of learning. I can't make somebody grasp something in the way that I want them to, unless their circumstances are right for it, just like myself. But then I also have learned that there are times where I need to direct the learning, not just facilitate. I need to be direct. And so I have to have that cognitive flexibility and the openness and really that understanding. So being able to see it from multiple perspectives and act on it. And if I don't have that skill, I have resources outside of myself, such as colleagues or other people in my life, that can help me develop that understanding and seeing where I need to go to get that resource.
Yes. That was just, it's so beautiful. And, there's just a wealth of resources out there. And it's just, you just sometimes have to be guided to see it. It's available and it's there. And if it's not there, then let's ask why.
Yeah. And sometimes we ask, oh, it's not there, so let's just make sure that we'll get it there for everybody else. And then we find out there's like 500 other resources that are similar, but because everybody didn't know. It kind of, I recently was at the Children's Funding Institute in San Antonio. And I went with a group from San Diego here, the San Diego Children First, I always get it wrong, the Children First Collective San Diego. And it's a collective of different entities and individuals that are working towards really making sure high quality early childhood education, early care and education, and youth experiences are available for every child in San Diego, no matter what their experience is. And so going to this institute on funding, there are people from all over the country there. And it wasn't like a giant event, but there were different people. Honestly, which I was very proud of, and I'm always very proud of, is that there's quite a few from California. Usually it's Northern California that has very innovative initiatives that they're trying to get on the ballot. And so it's really about funding that. And an interesting thing that I learned when, other than how much it costs to get something on the ballot, let alone help it succeed, is knowing who your champions are and looking at the different spaces that those champions may be, because there may be somebody else that's championing something similar. Like, for example, I think one of the examples, and I could be getting it a little bit off, so I'll just say it's my imaginary example, guided by my imaginary example, informed by facts. So, everybody, one thing that we can agree is that literacy is extremely important.
Yes.
And I am also on the board for an organization, Words Alive, which is a whole other conversation. But, ultimately it's like literacy is not something that should be inaccessible based on your economic, nothing. It should be accessible to everybody. Everybody should be able to be literate.
Yes.
And so let's say the librarians are on, there's a ballot initiative that's going to fund early childhood education, which we all think is wonderful. And that those pre-literacy skills will help them become readers, yada, yada, yada. We're focused on 0 to 5. Now, early childhood is 0 to 8, but looking at 0 to 5 world.
Yeah.
And so we get this ballot initiative out there, and then all of a sudden we hear the librarians are against it. We're like, how could librarians be against it? Well, they may have another initiative that may do similar things, but there are other sources. And so some of those champions that you would want for their early childhood may not have there might be things that impact, let's say, those funds that would go to funding early childhood may take funds from the library because it's being funded by the general fund. And they don't want that. And so it's knowing who you, not just that I hate using the term stakeholders because it sounds so informal, but it is, stakeholders,
really does.
Who everybody's there, but who are the stakeholders? I want to say, who are the people? Who are the people that are impacted or influenced by the multiple details? And once again, there goes that intention. Yes. What are the details, or are there enough details? Like, okay, our ballot initiative got struck down because librarians are a much stronger voice. And they're like, no, let's not do this. So next time, let's try again. I think that's the other piece is you have to be willing to keep trying and to be able to resource yourself so that you can take care of yourself and know when you need to step back and let somebody else do it because you don't have the resource.
Yes.
And so, I don't have the capacity to meet with all of these different people. I only have 24 hours in the day and I have a full-time job, and it's not my job. So where are those champions that are out there at that? And also, what are all of the other pieces? Who knows who? And, kind of like with the local planning council, you have people from different entities. We have parents. We have professionals, we have, nonprofits. So there's all of these different representatives, but then also those who are not at the table, who can't come and sit at the table, that may not even want to be at the table, who don't care about the table, still will be impacted.
Yes, still be impacted. We still have opinions and thoughts, but it is very taxing to be involved in all these different things and also be working full time and also be in the classroom and also be, 24-hour parent, like
yes,
it's hard to do all of those things. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, kind of stepping up and stepping back, allowing other
Mm-hmm.
people to lead when they need to, and taking that break when you need to is so important. And exactly, like I think I talked about in a different episode, but advocacy can look so different to so many different people. And being in
Yes.
that classroom every day, that is your own step of advocacy. You are
Mm-hmm.
doing the advocacy by being in that classroom every single day, right? And
Mm-hmm.
for the people who do have the capacity and do have the drive and the desire to be a part of these meetings, is it fun to go to school board meetings? Not particularly. It's not the time of my life, but I don't mind going there because I want to be involved. I want to hear what's going on. I want to hear from the parents. I want to hear from the school board members.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the local planning council. I want to be there. I have the capacity to be there. And, I have the time to be there right now. And so that to
Mm-hmm.
me is my form of advocacy. And that's how I'm showing up for my community.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many different ways and avenues to do that, to advocate within education and to be a part of that. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so much variety and beauty to it. You just got to look at
Mm-hmm.
what works. Again, coming back to yourself, what's going to work for
Mm-hmm.
me in the time that I have available right now that I have to spend with this. My mental capacity, my emotional capacity, like check in with
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Where are you? Do you have the capacity to do what
Mm-hmm.
it is you want to do? And it might be a not right now, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's
I tell
hard, and it
myself
can be
not
so
right now all the
hard.
time.
Yeah, it can be hard though, because it's not, you're like, I really, like something will happen. Like, man, if I was there, I could have helped, or,
Mm-hmm.
I had to step back, and now
Mm-hmm.
they're starting over again, and now look, they're still in the same place, and it could be frustrating. And I think what that institute really taught me is like, yeah, it can be frustrating. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we've got to learn to sit with at times that we
Yes.
really don't want to sit with it,
Yeah.
and saying, I don't want to sit with this. I'm not okay. I feel like this is a
Mm-hmm.
waste of resources and all of
Mm.
these other things. At the end of the day, the reality is I still got to sit with it. So,
Yeah. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
so I'll sit with it, and the feeling will end. It will go away, and I'll move on to something else, and it will be
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And it will be
Mm-hmm.
okay. And on that topic of advocacy and education,
Mm-hmm.
how do you reimagine education?
I To reimagine it, I think is a tough question because,
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I imagine it the way in this way. Right
Mm-hmm.
now is definitely not how I imagined it. I would like to reframe it for everyone. And I imagine, not everyone, but for those who are trying, there's lots of well-intentioned people who, when you have a little bit of knowledge of a system and they think they're helping and it has huge implications, or you want to rip the band-aid, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you brought up TK and how
Yes.
we've been advocating for high quality early childhood
Mm-hmm.
education and a pre-K system in California, and we've been
Mm-hmm.
advocating for it, and it hasn't happened the way that we imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my eyes, like, that's not how I imagine it. So to bring it into
Yes.
my imagination, I imagine an early care and education system that is seen as an integral part and valued of the larger
Mm.
educational system. It's seen as a holistic system that is fully
Mm.
funded, that is funded in the ways that will help those communities thrive in the way that they need to, that will help children, help families, help the
Mm.
educators. Every person within the system is able to contribute in the ways that will contribute to the learning and growth and development of others.
Mm-hmm.
And in a positive, healthy, there's negative things that happen, but I think a healthy and resilient way, so
Mm.
that we can evolve. There's no cookie cutter approach because we're not cookie cutters.
Yep.
It's like, in school they say, we're not a melting pot, we're a salad bowl. But guess what? There's a lot of stinking salads out there. So a lot of them won't even go into that debate for raisins and potato salad.
Oh,
But,
no. Oh, no. Don't get me started on that. No, thank you.
but just imagining that we respect the salads of the community, we respect the individuals and
Mm-hmm.
the and honor
Mm,
and grow as a community
yeah.
and evolve. And so I imagine a system that actually does that, has mutual respect and understanding of that
Yes.
collaboration that's needed to survive and thrive together.
Yes. I love it. Thriving together, just being in mutual aid of each other, mutual respect.
Mhm.
And I think that theme that we've talked about a lot is just
Mhm.
curiosity, staying curious about
Yes.
those around us,
Mhm.
wanting to learn more about those around us, wanting to learn to be the best that we can really be, and
Mhm.
honoring where our gifts are, honoring
Mhm.
where our gifts may not be the strongest.
You make those be your hobby, not your life
Yes,
skills.
yes, yes. I think it's so good to keep learning, to keep doing those things, and yes, keep doing it, but also just honoring that. Okay, that may not be where my special gift lies, but I know that my special gift is spread out in many other areas, and it is out there thriving. Um, Is there any initiatives that you are a part of? Anything going on that you wanted to share with the audience? Where can they find out more information about any of these initiatives that we've talked about?
Well, there's so many out there. However, I would say, there are some key spaces that I am really expending my energy right now, that
Mm,
I want to uplift. One of those, of course, is my employer. Not just because I get a paycheck, but I've been there for 15 years for a reason.
yeah.
And like neighborhood house association
Mm,
is also often mistaken for a place where you find out about housing. And so there's
I could see
so
that.
yes. So there's so much more. And so taking the
Mm,
time to visit Neighborhood House Association San
okay.
Diego's website.
Okay.
The other would be the Children's First Collective of San Diego, because
Okay.
they have the blueprint for childcare in San
Mm,
Diego County on their website. So
okay.
looking them up, Words Alive, once
Okay.
again, we're trying to eradicate illiteracy. Bottom line, but
Mm,
doing it in socially conscious ways that will
yes.
expand and push your mind. So with wordsalive.org. And the other one, of course, is the local planning council. May not be
Mhm.
everybody's thing, but it might be somebody you know's thing,
Mm.
you know.
Yes.
Or there's always emailing. I'm always available. Like find me on LinkedIn as you've got a question or wonder about
Mm,
something, and get connected and what you should know or help others know. So
yes.
there's
Thank you. And I'll be sure to link all of this in the description of this episode. So if you're curious about anything we've talked about, it'll be there. Quick little click away. Julia, thank you so much for joining me today. This has just been such a refreshing conversation. I feel so energized.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yay! Thank you so much for joining me and appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so grateful for you opening your platform and using your voice to spend some time educating our community and making the world a better place.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Conscious Pathways podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and follow Conscious Pathways so you never miss a new episode. And please leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show to grow. You can also follow Conscious Pathways on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. As always, those socials will be linked in the show notes. And I'll be back next week for more transformative conversations in education. Bye!